Hi, welcome to lecture number 7. We're going to talk today about World War II. We've already learned that there were many events leading up to World War II, including the rise of fascism in Italy and Germany. You most likely already know a little about World War II. Maybe you even know a lot. Maybe you've watched Saving Private Ryan. Perhaps you visited the beaches of Normandy. I can endorse both of these. Well, this lecture will focus on the information you need to know for success on your Regents exam. World War II was a truly global conflict, a total war. World War II had many causes, including aggressive empire building by Germany, Italy, and Japan. World War II was a very destructive world conflict because of the new technology and weaponry. World War II was a total war that involved civilians as well as military personnel. It created political and geographic divisions within Europe and affected global politics and culture for many years, and still does to some extent. There were 4 immediate causes for World War II. First of all, Japan invaded Manchuria, a province of China, in 1931. They were attempting to expand their empire. When the League of Nations chastised them for doing this, they simply withdrew from the League of Nations. The Japanese readily began more and more militarism in their nation, and then they invaded mainland China in 1937. The Japanese takeover of Nanjing is often referred to as the Rape of Nanking or Nanjing because of the brutal tactics Japanese soldiers used to dominate the region. The second reason World War II started was because Italy attacked Ethiopia, a nation in East Africa, in 1935. The Ethiopian king at the time, Haile Selassie, pleaded with the League of Nations to intervene. But that was one of the many weaknesses of the League of Nations. They didn't have the power to send troops, or even they didn't have an international force to deploy, so all they could do was tell other countries to stop selling weapons to Italy. Many countries refused to listen to the League of Nations and continued to give them weaponry. The Ethiopians were subsequently slaughtered by the Italians' weapons. Ethiopia was therefore controlled by Italy. So that's another cause of World War II. The third cause of World War II was German aggression in Europe. Once Hitler gained power, he set out to recreate the German Empire, what became known as the Third Reich. He violated the Treaty of Versailles by rebuilding the German army and by sending troops into the Rhineland, which was an area in between France and Germany. This happened in 1936. In 1938, he further violated the treaty by Anschluss, which meant that he added Austria into the German Empire. Hitler also invaded Sudetenland, that's spelled Sudetenland, look on the screen. This was part of the country called Czechoslovakia, and the Germans, they wanted to control this area because there were many German-speaking people who lived there. These aggressive actions by Hitler in the late 1930s made surrounding nations quite nervous, actually, and countries like France and Great Britain were particularly freaked out about having another world war. I mean, they were all still recovering from the first one, for goodness sake. Not to mention, in the mid to late 1930s, no country in Europe had a military force that could compete with the German war machine. So, no one wanted to see another war break out. The final cause of World War II was something called appeasement. This was a policy adopted by Western European nations. Under appeasement, nations gave in to Hitler's demands in order to maintain peace. See, no one wanted another war. Appeasement took place at something called the Munich Conference in 1938, in which Western nations thought that they had secured peace in our time by signing a series of agreements with Hitler. At the Munich Conference, it was agreed that Hitler could go ahead and take over the Sudetenland as long as he agreed not to do anything aggressive. Hitler initially agreed and then went against the agreement by taking over the rest of Czechoslovakia in 1939, and he formed the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo Axis alliance. In 1939, Hitler also signed the Nazi-Soviet Pact, in which the two nations agreed to not attack one another. In September of 1939, Germany invaded Poland. In response to this, Britain and France declared war on Germany. Germany later stabbed the USSR in the back by attacking them shortly after agreeing to the Nazi-Soviet Pact. After Germany invaded Poland, the months following were fairly uneventful. There wasn't a lot of fighting going on. People began referring to this World War II period as the phony war. But World War II quickly became a truly global conflict. The war was fought around the globe, not just in Europe. We tend to focus on the European conflict, but over half the war was fought elsewhere, especially in North Africa and much of mainland Asia, as well as Southeast Asia. We're going to see a truly modern war using technology that was a world apart from the technology that had existed during World War I. Modern warfare included better submarines. I highly recommend the movie Das Boot. Fantastic. Anyway, there were also walkie-talkies during World War II. There were deadlier machine guns, and they now had sonar to detect submarines. Ships used sonar to determine where submarines were, and then they could drop depth charges or bombs on the submarines. World War II also marked the beginning of radar technology to detect airplanes. We will see aircraft carriers used for the first time, many medical advances like better surgical techniques as well as the use of antibiotics, and overall better medical care for troops. However, there were deadlier bombs than during World War I. They had better tanks by World War II, and these tanks were well armored and fast moving. So overall, we're going to see a truly modern war. We're also going to see advanced aircraft capable of carrying more bombs. During World War I, aircraft had been much lighter and smaller, and they couldn't really be used for carrying many bombs. Aviation will rapidly change between World War I and World War II. So what were the key turning points of World War II? Well, it looked as though the Axis powers might just win for a while. Great Britain was under constant siege. Google the Battle of Britain. Google Blitzkrieg. Okay, the Battle of Britain, or Battle for Britain, and Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg actually means lightning warfare. It's a German word, Blitzkrieg. Germany used this technique during World War II, and it was highly effective. Some of the main turning points during the war for the Allied powers included the entry of the United States into the war in 1941. Why? The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. This happened on December 7, 1941. FDR will declare war on Japan shortly thereafter, which will then have us soon fighting Japan's allies, Germany and Italy as well.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Another turning point occurred between 1942 and 1943. This was the Battle of Stalingrad. Hitler's attack on the Soviet Union had been highly successful until this point. Hitler attempted to take over Stalingrad, a city in what we now call Ukraine. It's actually called Volgograd today. Remember what happened to Napoleon and his troops in Russia? Yeah, well, the Russians did something very similar to the Germans, and they were eventually forced to surrender. Another turning point in 1942 was the invasion of Italy. General Erwin Rommel, and that's spelled Rommel, R-O-M-M-E-L-L, look on the screen, proved to be pretty fearless in battle, and he led troops in North Africa as well as Eastern Europe. One of the battles in which he fought was El Alamein in North Africa, and British and American troops were able to prevent a German advance in southern France and Italy. Hitler was forced to send reinforcements, weakening his force in Western Europe. Rommel was later commanded to lead the German troops against the Normandy invasion in 1944. And we all know how that went. Yeah, think Saving Private Ryan. Hitler was so displeased with Rommel's performance that he forced Rommel to commit suicide via cyanide tablet, but was given a state funeral later, and the German public was told that he died from war injuries. So that brings us to the 1944 invasion of France. The Allies invaded France via the north in a place called Normandy on June 6, 1944. Allied troops crossed the English Channel and were able to break through the German defenses. Most of France had been taken over by the Nazis and were led by a government called the Vichy Regime. However, many exiled leaders including Charles de Gaulle, led the French resistance against the Germans and the Vichy regime, which was in collaboration with the Germans. The invasion of Normandy effectively freed France from German rule and rid France of the Vichy authoritarian regime that had been in power. The European War is going to end May 8, 1945, and this is often referred to as VE, or Victory in Europe Day. All right, we're going to talk about the end of the war more in next lecture. So thanks for listening. Bye.